Today on Law Next, a conversation about one of the most promising developments in access to justice that I've witnessed in my years covering this field: the use of generative AI to address the justice gap in this country. Over 90% of civil legal needs in the United States go unrepresented. For millions of people facing eviction, domestic violence, wrongful conviction, or other urgent legal crises, access to an attorney can mean the difference between safety and harm, between keeping a home and losing everything. A year ago, Thomson Reuters launched its AI for Justice program, providing legal aid organizations with access to CoCounsel, their professional-grade AI legal assistant, along with training and support specifically designed for the unique needs of legal nonprofits. Today, I am joined by two of the people who have been at the forefront of this initiative. Laura Safdie is Head of Innovation for Legal at Thomson Reuters and has been a champion for access to justice through technology since her days at Casetext, where she was a co-founder. And Pablo Ramirez is Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino, one of the organizations participating in the program. They're here to share some noteworthy results from the program's first year, with attorneys saving up to 15 hours per week, organizations serving 50% more clients daily, and urgent case materials being prepared up to 75% faster. More importantly, they'll discuss what these efficiency gains actually mean for real people in crisis situations. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before I get to any of that, please take a moment to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Whether you specialize in workers' compensation, employment and labor, or insurance defense, Meriscase was built to cater to your firm's specific needs. With a comprehensive suite of features, including document management, time tracking, billing, and online payment reconciliation, Meriscase can automate your practice and streamline your workflows. See how Meriscase can help scale up your firm today by visiting Meriscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. You didn't go to law school to waste time writing and responding to discovery requests. Never waste time on discovery again with BriefPoint. BriefPoint drafts your discovery responses and requests for documents within minutes of your first sign-in. BriefPoint is the most reliable discovery drafting solution on the market, and it works right out of the box. Get your first document drafted by going to briefpoint.ai and clicking Get Started. No credit card required. BriefPoint. Draft what matters, automate the rest. Now let's get to today's conversation. Laura Safdie, welcome back to Law Next. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having us.
And Pablo, welcome as a first-time guest on the show. Good to meet you. Glad to see you.
I'm here, Bob. Very nice to meet you as well. I'm very happy to be here.
So last year, Thomson Reuters launched this AI for Justice program, and now 1 year in, you're able to kind of provide us some insights, some data on what's been happening with it. But before we get to any of that, Laura, maybe you can kind of take us back to the beginning and give us the background on the AI for Justice program and what led Thomson Reuters to create it, what it's all about.
Absolutely. So if we go back to the very, very beginning, it actually dates back to when I very first saw GPT-4 and very first understood how significantly our relationship as lawyers with technology was about to evolve. It was like seeing the future in a crystal ball. And literally one of the first things out of my mouth were, oh my God, imagine what this is going to mean for access to justice. Because it became clear that we would soon be able to automate, scale, make far more efficient many, many, many substantive, critical legal tasks that we never thought before could be done by anything other than a human spending all the minutes and hours and painstaking detail review that we all remember doing. So that was where it really began. And then when we first built CoCounsel, some of our earliest beta testers were legal aid organizations. Mm-hmm. And we were asking these questions like, okay, tell us everything about, your workflow and the clients that you serve. And we were trying to ideate, what are those use cases that would really help the legal aid community as distinct from in-house legal teams, as distinct from, a boutique law firm. And then, as we had merged with Thomson Reuters about 2 years ago. And one of the first conversations we had with the executive team was, this is a really huge opportunity for not just access to justice, but our opportunity to really influence the broader legal community on what are the most high impact ways of adopting AI in a responsible way that really has impact for clients. And so, as you said, last year we launched officially the AI for Justice program. And what we wanted to set out to do was make AI not just like financially accessible to legal aid organizations, but really operationally accessible and emotionally accessible. And by that, I mean partner really closely to understand, what are your use cases? What are your blockers? What are the things that are unique about your practice area, and how can AI help? Because of course, as you know, AI has a lot of really incredible opportunities, but also limitations. And we wanted to partner really closely in not just developing those use cases with the experts, Pablo and many people like Pablo throughout the access to justice ecosystem, but then also document them and amplify them, like send them out to the broader legal community. So as you know, Bob, one of our earliest partners was the Innocence Center. We worked with them on how you can leverage AI on innocence work, but there are dozens of innocence organizations across the country. And so it's really an opportunity to dive really deep, but in a way that we think will be scalable and adoptable throughout the legal aid community.
Well, I want to go deeper into a lot of what you just talked about, but Pablo, let me just bring you into the conversation, ask kind of how you at the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino first heard about this. How did you get involved with this?
Well, we were fortunate to learn about CoCounsel through different State Bar California offered, I think, a pilot initially, and we joined it. We were happy and excited to join the CoCounsel pilot, because I knew we had to find a way to kind of scale our impact without burning out our staff. And CoCounsel seemed to offer that on a trusted platform that relied on trusted sources like Westlaw and Practical Law. So once I learned about it and I identified the change, kind of like a light bulb in the sky, Laura, I said, wow, what can this do to close that justice gap? And I just wanted to follow that and make sure I became a part of it and allowed our community to benefit from the different legal services that we can provide with CoCounsel.
So, Laura, let me come back to you. And as I've read about the program, I understand that there are kind of three pillars to it, as they've been described: access, support, scale. Can you kind of talk about what those three pillars are and how they help legal aid organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, access, like we need to make sure that legal aid can actually get tools like this, right? So in our initial version of the program, we had partnered really closely with 14 legal services organizations, diverse organizations, big, small, regional, local, focused on a specific practice area, or, broadly serving communities like Pablo's team does. And we gave them access but planned a much more deeper engagement to really understand their use cases. And that is enabling us to then scale. So we're documenting, like I mentioned, the broad range of use cases that are proven with as much data as we can about what the actual impact is, not just for the legal aid organization itself, but for the clients that are served. So what kinds of cases can we resolve faster? How are we impacting the actual individuals on Pablo's team? And we'll talk more about that. He mentioned, avoiding burnout. That's been an area that I've been really, really grateful to see play out as we were hoping it would. So one is access, and also we have, special legal aid pricing for the broader legal aid community, which I think was really important. And then we partner really, really closely, as I mentioned, to understand those unique use cases, not just say, here's AI, like you're off on your own. It's here's AI, and here's how other organizations have succeeded leveraging AI in domestic violence cases and landlord-tenant cases and veterans affairs and benefits cases. So really giving that playbook and then amplifying that playbook to the legal aid communities, so that it's not, I mentioned avoiding it being emotionally overwhelming to take this on. Like, it's hard to start something new, and it's especially hard if you're a smaller team that doesn't have technical staff. And so we really wanted to make this like, here you go. This is how others have succeeded with this type of practice area. And so that's sort of been our vision. It's not just, here's a tool, go figure it out. It's, here's a tool, Here's training that's specific to your domain. Here are proven use cases, and here's how we can partner to develop more use cases together.
As you said already in this conversation, you've been working on enhancing access to justice through technology since your case text days. I've known you for a number of years, and I can attest to the fact that you've been doing that. 1 year into this program, is there anything about what's happened over the past year that kind of surprised you that you weren't expecting in terms of AI's impact on legal aid organizations?
I think systemically, like I expected that if we adopted use cases in a really intentional way, we would see lawyers and paralegals being freed up to focus on like higher value work. And we've seen that play out, right? Like in the surveys of our innovator class, like more than 70% report being able to free up on materially more higher value work. One thing I really didn't anticipate that I was very happy to see is how much our view is really focused on substantive legal work, but there's so much nonprofit management that goes on behind the scenes that lawyers and especially executive directors have to deal with, grant writing and managing their teams. And Pablo's actually more credible to speak on this point, but also, managing their team's workload and making sure that they're not burning out and making sure that they have their job satisfaction. We're not taking our best people and working them to the ground because there's so much need out there. And so I've been really gratified to see both nonprofit management use cases. So like grant writing a grant application in 30 minutes instead of a whole day, as an example. Mm-hmm. And I've also been really gratified to see the feedback that more than half of the attorneys, even in this early stages of using AI, are reporting a reduction in burnout and an increase in job satisfaction. Because I think systemically, as you look at the legal aid community, burnout is a real risk, and keeping these lawyers who are doing this critical work in a sustainable pace, feeling like they have leverage and support is really important. So I think it's like an under-discussed part of the access to justice ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
But Pablo could speak more directly and intelligently probably on that.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear from you on that, Pablo. And I wonder if you could maybe start by talking a little bit about kind of the scale of the demand that you face at the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino. What is the office like? What is the kinds of cases and clients that you have, and at least in a general sense, how has deploying CoCounsel within your organization helped you in addressing that?
Thank you, Bob. Let me start with the justice gap. Legal aid services are in constant need. So in 2024, we received over 26,000 requests, but nearly 15,000 or 16,000 of those calls went unanswered. And these aren't like routine questions. They're like domestic violence, they're eviction, there's people facing homelessness. And the hardest part of my job is saying no, not because I don't care, more so because we don't have the resources. So when I started looking at the environment, I try to figure out a way to scale, as I mentioned earlier. Part of looking at the whole picture and how we can scale our services to help more people and bridge that justice gap is kind of identifying technology that can help us. And one of the biggest non-negotiables for our organization is confidentiality and accuracy. And in looking at these different platforms, CoCounsel was one of them that we identified because it has that trusted legal sources, it has that security behind it, and it's grounded on this credible evidence from Westlaw and practical law that I can rely on, that my staff can rely on. So the way that's helped us and shaped us, it's helped our organization speed up the work. It's helped us, our attorneys do more of what they want to do. Which is do that human interaction, stand by the client in court, do more of that listening, more of that active work they can do with the client that the client deserves. They deserve to be listened to. They deserve to be cared for. And CoCounsel allowed us to do that. I think one of the biggest keys that Laura mentioned is retention. What CoCounsel did for us, it allowed our staff to go back to do what they came to legal aid to do, is help people. It allowed them to do that with CoCounsel, and which increased our retention, avoided burnout. And I will add that the impact of what CoCounsel has done for us has been transformative. So with AI and with this different interactions that we've had, it's allowed us to serve more people. reduce 15 hours a week in helping more people. It allowed us to increase our time. It allowed us to double our urgent hotline calls. It allowed us to onboard more cases with full representation. And we're also able to respond to these large law firms 90% times faster. It allowed us to do drafting documents. We cut our time in half or 75% of the time. And every minute we save means another family that we can help, which is what truly CoCounsel represents for legal aid in a small legal organization. Help people in eviction, get them back into their home faster, quicker, by drafting motions fast. And it helped our domestic violence cases get more restraining, more protection by sifting through evidence and quickly identifying items so we can highlight to get them their protection. And as an organization, I think Laura mentioned, as an organization, small organization, I don't have a huge team behind me. We're a small organization of 45 staff members serving over 9,000 people a year. What that means is that I have to leverage technology to write these grants. And I think CoCounsel had that side effect. It allowed us to draft these documents, these grants, and allowed me to present our case in such a way that allowed us to continue to grow and serve more people in our community.
So you've been using it on the kind of the administrative side, as Laura talked about before, as you just talked about in terms of writing grants and that sort of thing. In terms of the more client-facing side or the legal side of things, can you give me sort of, you mentioned drafting motions. Can you give me other sort of specific examples of how lawyers or paralegals in your organization are using CoCounsel?
Yeah, I think it's so to tie this together with some human stories. We had one client who was wrongfully evicted from his home. Normally, drafting motions would take hours, and in that amount of time, this client would have been homeless and without a shelter. So our attorneys in that scenario utilized CoCounsel to quickly draft documents, which included responding to opposing counsel much faster, and then it allowed us to draft motions to get this client back into the home. And because CoCounsel, in this particular example, we're able to respond quicker to opposing counsel, draft motions a lot faster, and get them back into their home and avoid homelessness. And more importantly, restore their belongings. That's just one example. And another one, we were able to help a domestic violence victim who was looking for help, who has turned to different services before and never really got that protection that they needed. In that example, our attorney was able to leverage CoCounsel to review all the material, voluminous material quickly. And because of that, they were able to quickly identify these different threats, the different evidence that allowed them to present it to the judge, which got them the protection. So CoCounsel allowed them to review all this information really quick, whereas it would have taken us hours or days to look at all this information. And probably that would have meant this person went without the protection. Because of CoCounsel, we were able to do it much, much, much faster.
When you started down this road of using CoCounsel, working with Thomson Reuters on this, what was the staff reaction to it? Were they enthusiastic about it? Were they skeptical? Did it take some time to get them on board?
I think anytime we talk about technology, everybody, sometimes our staff have that challenges. Are you doing it just because you want to be part of the trend? Is this the trend that's going to go away? I think we had to communicate to them, and they already knew who Thomson Reuters was in Westlaw and others, so they had that connection. So once we introduced this new technology to them, they had to analyze it, they had to review it, and they had questions, but we brought them into the conversation. We made them part of the topic of reaching our clients, being more mission oriented. They were able to experience CoCounsel for themselves. And after they were able to use it, and it doubled their ability to assist clients, and it allowed them to see the impact that we were having in the community, which is one, getting this information out in a credible way, two, expanding our services to being right next to our client in court and making sure that they get the representation that they deserve. They were able to be excited about it, and they were able to come on board and pretty much adopt it as part of our day-to-day. And because I think it goes back to that simple meaning is every minute we save means another family that we're able to help.
It is totally understandable and totally expected to have that degree of skepticism or concern when it's a technology you've never worked with, and that you've heard various kind of risks discussed out in the market. And that's exactly why we wanted to take this approach where we go really deep on your client base, your practice area, your specific like blockers and opportunities within, Pablo's organization and all the organizations we work with, because it allows us to move from talking about like efficiency as like a tagline, which doesn't mean a lot to people until you talk about like what that efficiency enables. Like when it enables Pablo's team being able to serve twice as many people every day through their hotline, when it means there's a person who is going to be kicked out of their house and have all their possessions permanently destroyed. That one jumped out at me where I was like, wow, like the difference of a day could have meant their possessions being permanently destroyed. But because they could react faster and provide a compelling motion, it changed this person's life forever. And there are just countless examples like this. And so what we're trying to do is not just say like, hey, this is a technology and it makes us more efficient, but really this is a technology and these are the specific ways we've seen it work. And this is specifically what it means to the clients that you serve. And then figure out, again, with the experts, with Pablo and the lawyers and paralegals on his team, what's the next generation of how we can apply this to do even more.
And is that on the level of working with Pablo, or are you actually going in and working with staff to help them get onboarded and trained and whatever else?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Pablo can speak to his organization's experience, but with all of our legal aid organizations, there's training and customized support based on the use cases, like I mentioned, that we've been working to develop. We're continuing to expand that, right? So to new practice areas, we've gone really deep in a few to start. And so, of course, they get that training and ongoing support, but it's really a matter of also working with them. So first we can tell them everything we know, like we've developed a real expertise here, but ultimately they're the experts in their practice area. They're the experts in the communities they serve. And I think that humility for any AI developer is critical. So you can say, okay, here's this core technology, but how do we translate it to real world impact? And so that's why this partnership has been, I think, so powerful.
Yeah. Pablo, can you speak
Bob,
to that?
yeah. So if I may add a little bit, I appreciate that. I will add to what Laura's mentioned because all of that echoes and resonates with me. It's allowed our staff time to breathe. Instead of spending hours drafting declarations or doing research, they can turn around half the time. That means that they can return calls faster, give more attention to people in crisis. In our core clinics, every minute matters, and CoCounsel has really allowed us time to draft a lot of paperwork, allowed our clients to leave with the protections that they would otherwise not have, such as the domestic violence restraining order. But I will mention on my experience with CoCounsel is one of the biggest things that allowed our staff to have buy-in, to feel part of the process and allow this kind of technology to become part of our culture was the way CoCounsel rolled it out. It was a thoughtful and meaningful way. It included training. It included an amazing person who we were working with, Andrew, almost constant. He was really responsive. He was able to overcome any objection that our staff might have had or any questions. So it wasn't about shooting them down if they had an objection. It was more so about helping them understand how this is benefiting legal aid, how this is changing who we are and allowing us to serve our mission in more of a way that allowed them to feel like they're making more of an impact. And because of CoCounsel's thoughtful rollout, I think we're able to see the vision, see how it helps us, and then put it into practice in our areas, in our organization that allowed us to make the most meaningful impact.
So as you've worked together in San Bernardino and with some of the other participants, Laura, you talked about the fact that you've been kind of building out these use cases, building out more training around using this in a legal aid context. How does that amplify this program in other contexts? I mean, are you taking those use cases and expanding them out into other organizations, or you plan to do that, or what happens with all of that?
Yeah. Now, of course, the use cases are not connected to very specific experiences. There's a version where we're working very closely with individual organizations, and then there's the kind of public-facing version, of course. So it's not like
right.
We're sharing no confidential information is shared in this, but expertise is developed and then shared, right? So, when we work with organizations that have an emphasis in housing, and we've done, eviction responses and figured out what type of real-time support is needed through hotlines and researching complex housing statutes, like we turn that into a playbook that we then publish. And we're kind of on a journey towards publishing more and more of these. But our commitment is making this knowledge and expertise just totally publicly available, even to folks who aren't CoCounsel customers, right? Just to legal aid organizations who want to learn more about AI and learn more about the opportunity. We want to get really granular. It's not just here's AI in law, or even here's AI in legal services. It's here's AI in housing. Here's AI in exoneration work. Here's AI in domestic violence work. And we found that to be really productive because, like Pablo has said, like it's a small team. They all editorialize from a third-party perspective, like doing God's work, overworked, understaffed. And it's like, we want to make it as easy as possible to learn. That's just our like kind of philosophical commitment on this. And so, yeah, we have a public facing website where we're sharing case studies like from Pablo's team and others to really understand the opportunity to kind of overcome some of that reticence, to understand like this isn't just technology for technology's sake. It's like, here's the kind of impacts we've seen with other legal aid organizations and the communities they serve, as well as the publishing these really practical use cases. So right now, I think we've developed over 100 across at least a dozen practice areas, and we're in the process of publishing them as we're building them out.
I'm speaking with Laura Safdie and Pablo Ramirez about the Thomson Reuters AI for Justice program. Coming up, we'll explore the specific outcomes they're seeing for clients, from domestic violence victims getting protection orders faster to wrongfully convicted individuals having their cases reviewed sooner, and discuss how these results can be scaled to reach more legal aid organizations, law firm pro bono teams, and law school clinics across the country. But first, here's an opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. You've worked hard to build your firm. Don't settle for generic law practice management software. Case is the legal practice management software tailor-made for firms that specialize in workers' compensation, employment and labor, and insurance defense. With intuitive features like document management, time tracking, billing, and online payment reconciliation, Case provides robust solutions to support your firm's success. Visit mariscase.com to learn more. The $10 million call doesn't always come during business hours. Sometimes it's 10 p.m. and there's no one there to answer. Eve AI Intake is the always-on system trusted by top plaintiff firms to capture every lead, qualify every case, and make sure the biggest opportunities never slip away. Firms like Mike Morse Law are already using Eve to handle after-hours calls and keep million-dollar cases from slipping away. Visit eve.legal/intake. That's eve.legal/intake so you don't miss the next $10 million call at 10 p.m. Welcome back to Law Next. This is Bob Ambrogi, and I'm talking with Laura Safdie from Thomson Reuters and Pablo Ramirez from the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino about the AI for Justice program and its impact on addressing the justice gap. Before the break, we were discussing how legal aid organizations are using AI to dramatically increase their capacity. Now I'll talk about what that means for actual client outcomes and what the future holds for expanding this work. Let's get back to the conversation. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about, again, at this sort of 1 year-ish mark in this program, what has been kind of the impact across organizations? What are the commonalities that you're seeing in terms of the extent to which this is helping these organizations serve more people or whatever else it might be?
I mean, one thing we've learned is kind of to Pablo's point, being able to partner really deeply has been extremely impactful. I think that begs the question of like how much of that experience we can scale, right? And that's what I'm grappling with when we're talking about, publishing case studies, publishing playbooks. That's about trying to scale that experience that's kind of hard to replicate, which is Pablo's talking about Andrew. Andrew's an amazing professional who doesn't work with in-house legal departments and law firms and all sorts of people. He works with legal services organizations doing similar kinds of work. that focus has been super impactful. And so I think the next stage of this is really understanding how to scale that experience. I also suspect, this is just a theory, that as we all mature in this AI journey, it will not become a do we do this, but just a when do we do this, how do we do this. Everyone operationalizing this understanding that you kind of have to use AI. It's like not a viable option to continue doing things the way we've always done it. And so maybe that will kind of lower the activation energy required from organizations who are starting. So that's kind of big picture, is just figuring out how to really scale this effectively. Another piece is how to reach the broader access to justice ecosystem. I will say all year we've had law firm pro bono teams and law school clinics kind of knocking down our door, wanting to be part of the program, which is amazing. We've also had a fairly small team focused on this, so we wanted to get it really right in the model that we started on. But I can't ignore that anymore. I can't ignore the fact that by partnering with law firm pro bono teams and law school clinics, we would be able to reach kind of a more robust set of use cases and develop a different kind of expertise. So we're really interested in exploring that as well. And so we're moving in that direction also.
Pablo, you mentioned earlier that your staff is saving up to 15 hours each per week, I guess, as a result of using CoCounsel. I think that's the way you said it. And that you're seeing other, sort of efficiency gains, time savings. What about on the sort of outcome side? Have you seen any kind of impact on what happens with these cases and what the outcomes look like?
I think all of these benefits that we've seen from CoCounsel, which is the 15 hours a week that we save each, has really shown that we can do more. The biggest impact I've seen before CoCounsel, our representations, meaning us being able to go to court to be next to the person and represent them, was a lot lower. So we're able to increase it. So we're able to get the client the legal advice quickly. One, because we're giving them credible information that allows them to, one, be empowered, to exercise their rights, ensuring that they're not taken advantage of. And then after that, we're able to convert them into somebody who we can represent in court, to stand by them, right next to them, to make sure that they get that restraining order and they stop whatever abuser is trying to take advantage of them, whether it's a landlord or it's somebody else who they had an intimate knowledge of. So because of that, I've seen protections like domestic violence restraining orders get issued. I've seen people get back into their home when they were wrongfully evicted or wrongfully locked out of their property. The best example I have is we were going up against this large law firm, which us as a small organization were normally not able to respond to in a timely manner. Because of CoCounsel, we were able to quickly draft these documents that needed to respond to this opposing counsel, and they were able to see that we were serious and see that we were able to respond quickly. And because of that, we were able to draft a motion, get in front of a judge, and get them to force the judge, but not to force the judge, but force the landlord to let our client back into this home. And because of that, this client was not sleeping in the street. This client was not homeless. So these impacts are real for our legal aid. I see where we can give them some credible information, legal advice, and help them on their way. So sometimes they just need that extra reassurance. They're not at the point where they need legal intervention, and they're able to get that information quickly, efficiently, and they're able to exercise it. And then if that matter escalates, we're able to be there, right there, standing next to them, representing them in court. And I've seen that play out in the courtroom and in our office day to day.
I feel like I should say for your listeners, just as a reminder, a lot of people, know the Miranda rights, like you have a right to an attorney, one will be, assigned to you. That's not true in civil cases. And so the vast majority of people who find themselves with a legal issue do not have a lawyer in court with them. And our system was set up in such a way that you're really not as well set up to articulate your position without a lawyer in the room, because they have a set of expertise that people who are not lawyers don't have, and access to resources that people who are not lawyers don't have. So when Pablo says they can put more lawyers in more courtrooms to stand, side by side with the person who's in need of support, who's in need of, help getting back into their house, who's in need of a restraining order because they're in a safety situation, that's unbelievable. And that's exactly what we set out to do. And again, I keep getting back to efficiency isn't a goal. The goal is what efficiency allows you to do. And it allows you to use your time in these really high impact ways that a machine can't do. And so that, to me, that's one of the biggest things, like putting lawyers in courtrooms with clients to help them succeed, not just like leaving everyone with like, here's some advice, like good luck on your own as a pro se litigant, which is unfortunately what so many people have to do just through lack of resources. So that I cannot emphasize enough how impactful that is.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point, and it's I realize it's a probably almost an unfair question to ask about outcomes, because who knows with outcomes in the legal system. I mean, there are so many variables that go into how a case turns out or what happens with a case. But obviously, that ability to have lawyers put more time into, be more physically present in, be more a part of a case is critical to how that case turns out one way or the other.
I think your question about outcomes is
Yeah.
totally valid
Yeah.
and important. And part of what we're doing is looking also at proxies, like when the Innocence Center can submit 3 times as many exoneration petitions, like you don't get exonerated as an innocent person in jail unless someone submits a petition for you. And so if you don't get that level of attention, like your chances of exoneration are 0. And then if you do, then you have a shot. And so we're just seeing that play out across organizations, across the country, across use cases. And it's really, we have just scratched the surface. There's so much more opportunity. So no one here is saying like mission accomplished, but we're saying we're on the right track, and we're seeing early results, and they're really exciting.
Well, insofar as you have just scratched the surface, what are your plans for making a deeper cut in the surface? I mean, how do you plan to expand this? What's going on in that regard?
Yeah, so the number one way is like we've developed this expertise now, and we're going to continue to do that. And by that I mean more playbooks of real ways in which lawyers can provide better, faster, more meaningful support to litigants in a broad range of areas, and publishing them and amplifying them. And thanks to you for putting us on the podcast and asking others to do the same, so we can educate the access to justice community on the best ways of adopting AI. Pablo and I were just talking, we're actually both on the board of a California organization called One Justice that provides kind of systemic support and training to legal aid organizations across the state. And we were just talking about how we can leverage those partners to educate more legal aid organizations in a way that's really practical and adoptable. So it's like kind of continuing on that mission of sharing this knowledge and kind of actionable ways of getting started that are achievable. That's thing one. And the other thing, as I mentioned, was going broader within the access to justice ecosystem. Law firm pro bono teams work with a broad range of legal aid organizations on a broad range of practice areas as well as community served, and that is a really important vector for change, as well as law school clinics, and so those are areas that we're really excited about. And then finally, it's actually working even more deeply with organizations like Pablo's, because it's like this self-reinforcing system. Like when you see 1 or 2 or 3 use cases work really well, then all the lawyers who, again, are experts in the field and seeing the opportunities, they say, oh, what about this use case? What about this opportunity? What about this way of using the tool? Is this a good fit or is it not a good fit? And so those conversations will also continue. So, part of it's winning the hearts and minds and saying like, this is a partnership that's worth engaging in. And then the next part of it is just playing that out over the next months and years. So we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah. What about just the expanding the participants? I think you said at the outset there's something like 14. Did you say 14 legal aid organizations involved in this up to this point? Do you plan to bring in other organizations? What's the process for that? If an organization's interested, how do they go about getting involved?
Yeah, so very good question. We did have a set of applications last year, and got a huge, overwhelming result. And from that's how we met Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino and others that we've been working with. We've had a lot of inbound interest, and so we're working with each of those either organizations or law firms to assess, are they committed to having this level of engagement with us so that we can really learn from these rollouts. That's really important. We're also very hyper aware of making sure that we're working with folks who are comfortable with us, like learning and amplifying use cases. So there isn't an application process for another class, but we are kind of more assessing inbound interest on a rolling basis. So I will provide a way to get in touch with us if someone who's listening thinks that their organization may be a good fit.
All right. Well, you said you have a website somewhere? Or?
Yep, there's a website. I think it's
Oh,
legal.thomsonreuters/AI for justice, but I'm going to get the real URL and
okay.
share it with you so you
All
can
right.
post it.
Yeah, or I'll put that in the show notes if I can find it. I didn't realize there was a website.
Yep.
Pablo, what do you think? I mean, what are the kind of lessons here? Go a little big picture here, but I mean, obviously, you seem to believe this has been a success in your office. What are the implications, do you think, of the experience you've had over the past year on AI's use in addressing the justice gap?
So that's a really good question, because I think the bigger picture for me, or the bigger lesson that I've learned, is that the justice gap is national. Organizations everywhere face the same pressure: huge demand, limited staff, and not enough funding. And excuse me, if this can work in our small organization, it can work anywhere. It it's not just about the tech itself, it's about training. I think Laura touched on these different making points: practical, adoptable, publishing items, sharing the knowledge. It's about the safeguards. It's about making sure that the human side of justice always comes first. Because as I mentioned earlier, a minute we stay with another family, we can help. And justice delayed is justice denied. And AI helps us deliver that faster justice and more fairly across the board. Because at the end of the day, it isn't about technology for its own sake, as Laura mentioned. It's about making more justice and making sure justice reaches people when they need it most, whether that's stopping an eviction, protecting a survivor, exonerating someone, or helping the family stay in their home. If AI can help us do that faster and for more people, then it's helping us close that justice gap. And for us, it's simple: every minute we save is another family we can help.
Laura, what about you? What are your thoughts on that? What are the lessons for you? I mean, I know you've been a true believer in the application of AI to access to justice for a number of years now. But as you 1 year in on this program, on this program, what are you thinking in terms of what this means for addressing the justice gap more broadly?
I will say I am more optimistic than ever, which tends to happen when you see like real results out in the world and you get beyond the theory. Bob, back in January, so like 10 months ago now, 9 months ago, we had a really great event on AI for legal aid, co-sponsored with the Legal Services Corporation, who I'm also involved with. And it was like amazing because that huge room of legal aid professionals were in such a varying stages on their AI journeys. Some were like, we've been testing it and we have these use cases and we're, building out consumer facing like chatbots to help them access our reliable information through a chatbot. And others are like, I keep hearing about this AI. It's super scary. And everything in between. And so in just 10 months to be able to come back to the community and say, and like I said before, there is so much opportunity here. We have not even scratched the surface, but look at all the impact that organizations like Pablo's have already found, both within their organizations on the sustainability of their models, on the sustainability for individual lawyers and paralegals who do the work, all the way to the clients and real world critical outcomes. That to me is like, okay, this is validation. We are on the right track and we need to keep doing this work and do more of this work. And so I think especially now when, funding is, as threatened as it's ever been, we need to do everything we can to use every tool at our disposal to provide as much access to high quality legal representation as humanly possible in this country. And this is, to me, the best and most viable vector for driving change and closing the justice gap as I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so I don't want us to sleep on this opportunity. And frankly, I'm seeing law firms and corporate legal departments adopt AI at such a rapid pace. And it would be devastating to me if the legal aid community, for lack of resources or tech staff, wasn't able to capture that same benefit or more, because their communities they serve deserve it. Full stop.
Yeah.
And so that's the work that we want to continue doing.
Yeah, so lots of opportunity. What are the sort of the big hurdles and obstacles that still remain? I mean, you've talked about funding, you've talked about just staff capacity, that sort of thing. Are there other kind of major hurdles that are blocking or at least inhibiting the wider use of AI in the legal aid community?
I'll speak to my experience, and I'd love to hear from Pablo on that. As like an operator, I'm really focused on the tactical challenge, which is just it's a very disaggregated community, right? Many small organizations, regional, local. And so just sharing that knowledge is kind of a ground game. It's going to events, it's being on critical podcasts like yours, Bob. It's word of mouth. It's how can we share this knowledge more broadly is just like a operational challenge to address. I think there is still real fear. You know, we've talked about applications of AI that are higher risk. And by that, I mean, we've talked about this before, Bob, oversimplification, but you can use AI to supplant human decision-making, like in sentencing decisions, in housing decisions, in admissions for universities. And those are very high risk uses of AI. And I think those are the uses of AI that are often top of mind for a legal aid lawyer if they aren't really deep in the space, because those are the applications of AI that really concern them, that they need to fight against. And so I think educating that there's a totally different bucket of use cases was just leveraging AI to elevate information or cut through large amounts of information that help humans make better, faster decisions. And that's the bucket of AI that I'm trying to focus on, that we can leverage to help people. And I think that, to get back to your question, is a challenge, because if you don't know very much about the technology, you're hearing bias, you're hearing risk, and already you're coming in with like a negative or fearful position. That's totally understandable. And it's our job to overcome that and say, those are real. Like bias in AI is real, but we're talking about a different set of use cases that can help the people that you are so desperately trying to help. And so that's where we want to focus on that, like just education is where we're really focused.
Yeah. Pablo, what about you? You have any thoughts on that question on sort of the obstacles, the speed bumps that prevent wider adoption or get in the way of wider adoption of AI in legal aid?
Yeah, I think Laura touched on a lot of important points in her Legal Services Corporation conference, where you identify these different organizations that are at different levels. Some of them are building it, some of them are testing it, some of them think it's scary, some of them are trying it, more optimistic, and are early adopters. But that is what we see every day. Legal aid community needs to take advantage of this to capture that benefit that Laura mentioned, or otherwise they're going to be lost. There are challenges that we see every day. For example, I was in a different meeting where people are talking about how scary it is, how it's easier to ignore it than to participate in, or just wait and see. The problem with waiting and see, you're letting this train pass by. You're letting these bigger organizations take this technology that's going to help us to use it against our community. By taking part and by participating and by being practical and by talking about the different challenges and being open with these objections and listening to how we can overcome them, we can certainly participate in the solution to help our community get the information that it needs. I think Laura also made an important point. It's not about replacing human thought. It's about finding different ways where we can expand and leverage our this technology to help us sift through these a lot of different documents and a lot of different information in a quickly way, but allowing our attorneys to be there, because our attorneys are never removed from this process. They're part of the process. They use their expertise to ensure that this information is accurate. They use our paralegals use their knowledge to make sure that what that client is receiving is credible. So we're never replacing human thought. We're allowing our staff to do what they believe in, make that human connection, listen, and be part of it. And I think Laura also touched on the whole funding component, because I've heard people say, well, shouldn't we just focus more on funding? Sure, funding is great, but while we make that fight to get more funding, AI is how we scale the limited resources we have today. It's not a replacement for more staff. It's a force multiplier that lets us serve more families right now in the minutes that they need it, because every minute that we save is another family that we can help. And that just comes to fruition when we're able to communicate this by sharing this knowledge, by educating people, by telling them that, yes, it can be scary, but we're not trying to replace that component, that human thought. We're trying to amplify our amazing staff and let them do what they do best, make that human connection.
Yeah, AI is a force multiplier. Very important point. Um, we are just about out of time here, but I'd like to give each of you an opportunity. If there's anything else you wanted to mention that we haven't had a chance to talk about up until now, or just any closing thoughts. Laura, how about you?
I would just ask your listeners that if you work with pro bono attorneys, legal aid attorneys, folks running law school clinics, let them know that you heard about this. Like I mentioned, it's a really broad community of people all over the country helping communities in need, and all we want to do is kind of share the learnings from this and enable people to kind of make their informed decisions about how to leverage AI. But it takes time to get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
So please share this if you know someone who you think would find it beneficial.
Thank you, Laura. Pablo, any final thoughts?
Yes, so I'll add, I think I've talked to many different people at different stages in their lives, and my advice has always been start small, something low risk before you take on these high risk projects. Learn and ask questions and involve others into ask questions, because I love when I'm rolling out a new technology to my staff, I love to hear their objections, because that allows me to set aside their fears and resolve any concerns that they may have, rather than letting this thought linger in their mind. And I will add also that before AI, our staff was drowning on long hours just to draft documents or research cases. With AI taking that load, our attorneys and paralegals have breathing room. They're less overwhelmed, and they can focus on what drew them to this work in the first place, helping people, which is good for morale, retention, and impact. And for us at Legal Aid Society, we know justice can't wait. Families facing eviction or domestic violence need help in the moment. Now, weeks later, and AI has allowed us to respond faster, represent more people, and focus on the human side of advocacy. Because at the end of the day, every minute we save means another family we help. And I'll close with this: if we don't use that technology as small organizations, big organizations will use it against us to take advantage of our client community. And the only way I can make sure that I'm representing my community well, is by leveraging this amazing information and technology to amplify the work that we do at Legal Aid and amplify our staff.
Can I just make one addition? Because Pablo's very eloquently put that in, and I just want to make sure that we leave with the knowledge that, the long-term vision here is to foster a more equitable justice system where everyone can access timely and effective legal assistance. We as a society are nowhere close to delivering that. And so I'm talking incrementally because that's how we've made progress, incrementally. But let's take a step back and realize the enormity of the opportunity here, and that our experience this year really proves that professional AI applied ethically by informed domain experts really creates a scalable blueprint, and to further invest and further focus and further lean in, because this really is, like, of my lifetime, the biggest opportunity to make a real dent in the justice gap. And so we might be talking really incrementally, but we should be thinking in a revolutionary way. And I think we are witnessing a revolution in the delivery of legal services, but we're at the beginning of that.
And to that point, I mean, it's probably worth observing that while Thomson Reuters and you deserve great credit for making CoCounsel available to legal aid organizations in this way, there are other products out there. There are other companies out there that could also be contributing to this effort. Some of them actually already are in various ways. There's a number of companies that make their products available either at lower cost or even for free in some cases to legal aid organizations and other kinds of nonprofits. But if we're really going to address this on the kind of scale you're talking about, Laura, it can't be just one company. It can't be just one product. It's really got to be something much broader. So if
That's
you're
exactly
listening
right.
out there, companies.
We're all
here's a
in this
model for
together
you.
on this point,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
We're not going to be able to do this alone, and Pablo's not going to be able to do this alone. This is more proving out a model that I hope we get many, many partners in. Like, you saw the Everlaw survey that they just put out, which I thought was really compelling. I think one thing that we've done uniquely so far is really partner deeply with the legal aid community and seeing real outcomes. And we just want everyone to take that knowledge and build on that.
Yeah. And Everlaw is an example of a company that does have a partnership program with with legal services organizations. There are several others out there that currently have those kinds of partnerships, and that's great to know.
I will add, Bob, real quick. I do agree with everything you've said as far as not one company, but it's also important to say not one legal services can do it all. By working together and replicating this model that we have here, you can certainly take it and scale it to where we're seeing bigger impact, and not just getting closer to trying to bridge the justice gap and trying a different model, which is leveraging technology. Still going after the funding because we definitely need staff. I'm not saying we don't need staff. I'm saying we can take advantage of technology to increase and amplify our work. And I do highlight Everlaw has been a big partner of Legal Aid as well. So there are amazing technologies working together to try to do a lot bigger impact. And with the technology and the companies working together with legal services, I think incrementally we can do a bigger change and make a bigger impact.
I'm tempted to ask now, given what we've talked about the last couple of moments here, but I mean, are you optimistic that we actually can at some point sort of bridge the justice gap? I mean, what is the long-term prospect here? Either of you.
Oh, I thought that was...
For me, I would probably say I'm always optimistic. I think technology, where we're at today, is such an amazing, revolutionary way that we've never had before. So it's an opportunity. But I think the justice gap continues to grow. The disparity continues to shine through. So I think we just have to continue to use all the tools in our tool belt. Technology is an amazing tool that helps amplify our staff together, along with our staff and along with our resources and along with additional funding in order to get closer. Will we ever bridge it? I don't know, because of the technology. I mean, the justice gap continues to get wider and wider, and our goal is to try to catch up to it. But I think with the different technologies and leveraging these different tools, we're getting closer. Will we ever bridge it? I don't think we will, because it continues to grow. But I feel more optimistic seeing the amazing tools like CoCounsel and these different tools that we have in our tool belt to try to serve the population.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 92% of civil legal needs go unrepresented. So
Yes.
Will it be zero? Probably not in our lifetime. But if we could cut that in half, imagine the impact we're already seeing is just, the opportunity is huge. So I would consider this, if we can, I would say, like, shift the curve and change the trajectory that we're on, that would be a big win. And then we just amplify further and further these use cases, and the ones that will be available to us in a year and 2 years and 3 years that aren't possible today because the technology itself continues to evolve. So there's so much opportunity.
Yeah. Well, Laura and Pablo, thank you so much. Pablo, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to add that justice gap is a great example, and it does highlight that the gap continues to grow. If you see it year after year, it continues to grow. So as Laura mentioned, we may not be able to close that gap, but we can certainly take a bigger bite with technology.
All right. I like that. Laura and Pablo, thank you so much for the very good and very important work that you're both doing. And thank you for coming on the show to share your stories about what you're up to. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you both for having us.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so by messaging us on LinkedIn or other social media, or just email me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. If you're a fan of LawNext, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.